Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about some new Battlefield 6 campaign details that have been revealed from official sources this time, which is a breath of fresh air via a recent interview. So this is going to give us an indication of the direction that all the companies that are involved in making the next Battlefield game are looking to take with the campaign. And then later on in the video, we've also got some new data mining from Temporal from one of the latest Battlefield Labs builds. He's found some new video files there that I wanted to touch on quickly. So without further ado, if you guys do enjoy the content here on the channel, make sure you are subscribed so you keep up to date with everything Battlefield. And as always guys, thank you so much for the ongoing support. Really does help out the channel. A lot of you guys still aren't subbed, so it would be a massive favor to me if you could do that if you watch the videos on the regular. If not, that's fine, totally get it, but yeah, any little help goes a long way. So over on inverse.com, they have recently published an interview with a couple of guys from Motive who, as you may know, are working on the next Battlefield campaign. So it's with the creative director Roman Campos Areola and the executive producer Philippe Ducharme. Now, obviously, the last Battlefield game, 2042, didn't have a campaign at all, and I think players in general have always regarded Battlefield campaigns to really be like the icing on the cake. They're not necessary, they've never been some of the best single-player experiences out there, but I'd still prefer one in a Battlefield game rather than not, as long as it's not going to negatively affect the game. So, we've had a lot of talk recently about, multiplayer stuff. Let's jump into what they've been saying here about the single player. So the article reads, now developer EA Motive is looking to Hollywood for inspiration for the next big entry in the Battlefield series, but where it's putting that inspiration is a little different than you'd expect. I am a big fan of Lioness, creative director Roman Campos Areola told Inverse. The show, based on a real-life CIA program that recruited an all-women team to operate in the Middle East, is a little more cerebral than the typical macho military films centered around soldiers on the front lines. So, sounds like that's kind of what they're going for here. They don't want to go for the cliche, military-driven campaign, so if that's something you were hoping for, I don't know, maybe you're going to be a bit disappointed. Just because he's talking about a series, though, that revolves around an all-women team, I wouldn't get too worried about that. I don't think it's going to be like an all-women campaign or anything, guys. So, for anybody at the back, just calm down. It's probably going to be fine. Although that show does sound interesting because I guess if you had an all-women CIA team, they would pretty much go undercover in the Middle East and they would really never suspect women there of being in the CIA, right? So that sort of makes sense in that context. So they continue here. Meanwhile, executive producer Philippe Ducharme says, I really enjoyed Civil War, Alex Garland's 2024 film, which follows a group of journalists documenting an American secession crisis, also subverts war movie tropes. Some of the things that we're pushing in this game, the film is actually a good reference. So I haven't seen that film. Maybe this is a bit of homework for me, maybe some of you guys as well, maybe some of you have seen it, and if you have, comment down below it and let me know what you think of those things, because it seems that they are drawing inspiration from those sources. So they say the elements we're really interested in is the concept of talented but ordinary people put in extraordinary situations. That creates a very interesting dynamic in terms of relationships with other people, and these are elements that we're looking to capture in the single player. I feel if we go back to Battlefield 5, I believe it was, I've only played that campaign once, so it's not too fresh in mind, but I think they kind of focused on some of the lesser told war stories there. Like didn't we have a story in Norway where you were playing as a female character there, so not your typical war story that you would see in most other games. It sounds like they're sort of trying to do a similar thing maybe here. The Montreal-based Motive has made a name for itself with robust single-player experiences like Star Wars Squadrons and most recently the excellent 2023 Dead Space remake. The studio hopes to apply its skills to one of Electronic Arts' most important franchises. So they say Dead Space allowed us to know the quirks and strengths that we all have and how we complement each other as a team. The goal of refining the 2008 survival horror classic while staying true to its spirit was a unifying one for the young studio, but it also gave them a surprising amount of preparation for transitioning to Battlefield. On Dead Space, we talked a lot about the curve of tension, how to go from beat to beat, having the highs and lows to keep players hooked, and even play with their expectations a little bit. It's obviously very different in a game like Battlefield, but we still brought that mentality over. Now, I have played both of those games. I played Squadrons. It was a pretty good Star Wars game. It's far from being the best Star Wars game or the best game in general that I've ever played, but I think that Motive did a good job on that one there. I've also played the Dead Space remake. I never played the original, but I thoroughly enjoyed that. Then again, I'm not sure it necessarily says much because obviously the whole world building, the narrative, all of that stuff is already being created for the game. So remaking that, yes, whilst it's a challenge and it is something that a lot of studios don't get correct, I'm not sure it gives you as much credibility as if you had made like a brand new narrative, a brand new world, a brand new IP. And to be clear here, I'm not exactly sure what else Motive have done. Those are the only two projects I'm really aware of. Pacing its campaign and narrative is the number one way Dead Space is impacting the next Battlefield, which you shouldn't expect to go full throttle throughout its single-player components. Ducharme says the team is taking extra care to balance slower but narratively engaging moments with the high-octane firefights one would expect from the series. Battlefield's single-player campaigns have often benefited from such an approach. Battlefield 1's blend of hectic gunfights, vehicle sections, and stealth marked a high point for the series. 2015's Battlefield Hardline may have been divisive for traditional fans, but its street-level campaign that allowed players to approach things non-lethally marked one of the most creative entries to date. So here it sounds like we could be getting a lot of variation in the mission types. Indeed, stealth, maybe solo missions here where you're sneaking through. Of course, we're going to have these massive firefights that you will expect from a Battlefield game, but also some of those slower, more narrative-driven moments. As well as, of course, vehicles. If we think back to Battlefield 3, we saw some really iconic vehicle levels there. The jet level is probably one of the most iconic campaign missions ever from a Battlefield game, and we also had some great co-op missions there as well with the attack helicopter. So I'm down for that. I would like a mixture of all those things. So Motive, of course, is one of 4 studios working on the untitled next entry. In addition to working on single player with developer Criterion and DICE, it's also producing multiplayer maps with DICE. Motive had previously collaborated with DICE on 2017's Star Wars Battlefront 2, and Ducharme still considers it a privilege to have learned from the Swedish developers' extensive knowledge of crafting great multiplayer games. Some of the time. We work with their leads and directors to understand what steps we should be following, what the right approach is to make sure we're delivering maps at the high level they've been doing, Ducharme says. And they've been extremely generous with their feedback and time. We knew how to use the tools, but we didn't necessarily have the knowledge to deliver the best maps. This is kind of funny, because a lot of the maps that came out, well, let's face it, all the maps that came out for Battlefield 2042, the most recent Battlefield game, were so utterly bad, they had to remake or redo all of the maps, guys. Maybe some of you who have only recently joined Battlefield 2042 aren't aware of that, but that is a thing that happened. That should never have happened in any AAA gaming company. You have to literally redo all, like, most of the content in the game as best you can. So I don't know, taking pointers from DICE, I hope they certainly learned from their previous mistakes if they're going to be giving out tips now. Now, okay, you know, credit where it's due. I think they have done a good job fixing up Battlefield 2042 as well as they could. And I'm sure the main reason that they shipped the maps in the terrible state that they were was twofold. First of all, they didn't get the time from EA. I'm convinced that most of this was EA's doing, just stepping on DICE's toes. I'm not saying DICE aren't to blame at all, but I really think it's mostly EA's fault here for just, you know, basically telling them and taking control and not giving them the time that they needed and that they deserved. But it was clear that 128 players was a massive mistake as well. It just led to these huge open maps. There was no cover anywhere. Traversing them was an absolute nightmare. And it seems that DICE have now learned their lesson on that. Of course, we see them going back to 64-player maps with Battlefield 6. Now, interestingly here, he says, I play our maps more, so maybe it's the knowledge I have of the spaces, he said, but they're extremely fun, and I think the results show just how our teams really work together to get there. So we have, of course, seen approaches like this before. On Battlefield 2042, I know that DICE Stockholm made some of the maps, and then Ripple Effect Studios made some of the others. I believe they made Flashpoint, so sometimes DICE do sort of outsource them to other companies, and I'm sure they've got some good communication and collaboration going on there. They don't just, like, let them do whatever they want, right? Of course, we have to have a cohesive game with maps that are designed in a similar manner. It sounds like Motive don't really have a whole lot of map design experience under their belt, not when it comes to a game like Battlefield. And, you know, designing a map for a Battlefield game, it's got to be a tough job. That has got to be a tall order, because there are just so many things that can go wrong, as we've seen in past games. You've got to get all of the sight lines correct. It's not like Call of Duty, right, where you've got 3 lanes, it's a super small map, you've got, 6 players, and that's pretty much it. You're good to go. It's way more complicated than that. However, what we've seen out of the Battlefield Labs leaks so far does look pretty promising. The maps actually have cover, they have full art on them, there's a lot of destruction going on, so it's already looking way, way better than it ever did in Battlefield 2042. So there's a bit of food for thought for you. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there has been a bit of a data mine out of Temporal. Temporal took a vacation, and that is why we haven't been seeing any data mines out of him for the past few weeks, or maybe even months. But it seems that he has returned, and he has found some video files from the latest Battlefield build. And I actually asked him where he found these, because they look extremely cinematic, almost as if you've gone back to Battlefield 4, and for those of you who remember the cinematic tools in Battlefield 4, it's like somebody's been recording the game with those tools. So I asked him, like, where did he get these, and he said they're probably placeholder footage for the main menu, and basically he's just merged a bunch of these pieces of footage together and slowed them down, and they really look pretty cool, and in fact it really makes me want to see cinematic tools for the next Battlefield game and see what the community can create with those. Needless to say, guys, I cannot, like, post this in my video. I would if I could, but I've already had a copyright strike on one of my videos. I'm not prepared to take another one, but I will link Temporal's Twitter down below, so if you guys want to go and take a look at it, I recommend doing it soon before it gets DMCA'd, and he actually even says here himself, you know, this is just for fun, a couple of slow motion clips from the latest Battlefield Labs update, DMCA takedown incoming. He's probably not wrong. It sounds like EA have really been cracking down on a lot of the sources for these various leaks on these data mines over in one of the most popular Battlefield discords. I don't want to name it, you know, just so I don't bring any flack their way, but they had a leaks channel going on there, and I know for a fact that EA have basically DMCA'd the Discord channel, which I didn't think was possible. I thought they had absolutely no jurisdiction over what's being shared in a private Discord, but apparently they do. So, you know, I have to be careful. Everybody kind of has to be careful. Again, I wish I could show you guys in the video, but I'm sure if you're smart, you'll find it. Guys, as always, leave me your thoughts below. Let me know what you thought of everything we discussed in today's video. What do you think about the campaign? You know, for me, I'm not really that bothered about the campaign. I think the vast majority of anybody's player hours really in a Battlefield game is going to come from the multiplayer mode. Campaign is something I will play through once, maybe twice if it's really, really good. But let's be honest here, Motive and indeed any of the studios working on the game, they're not CD Projekt Red, they're not Rockstar, they're not Bethesda, right? They're not going to be making some absolute romping, sprawling, narrative, giga world. It's just going to be like a 10-15 hour campaign, and then you'll be done with it. I'm not saying it won't be enjoyable, but it's definitely pretty low on my priority list. But what do you guys think about it? Let me know. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe, of course, for more Battlefield content here on the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.